in Kiddushin, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. We finished the fourth line. So the point is that if a person had was Mekadesh a woman with a Hadass and Mat, and then which was not with a Pruta, and then she was holding it, and then he said, but she knew it was worthless, and then he said, well, there's a lot of money sewn into it, and she was quiet. Is that acceptance or not? So the Gemara tries to say that it's shtikel acher matan maus, so there's nothing. It's quiet after the money has been given, and so there's nothing about it. And then Rava said, I know the source for this is if you gave her something as a pikadon, and then changed and said, "Oh, be mekadesh me with it." So if it's after matan maus, it's not okay. So that's what the Gemara had been talking about. So in the fifth line, and you give it an aleph, kashabei b'pumnara mishmei Rav Huna breder Yeshua. In Pumnara, they asked the question from Rav Huna breder of Yeshua about this. Is Rava really correct that he looked at the halacha about the machatzalas, about the mat, isn't a sin alachar matan maus from this case of where he was giving it as a pikadon? Hasan b'toras pikadon yavinu nehale, because in the second case, the brisa from Rava, that was the case where he gave it as a pikadon. Savra ishadina lahu mitavre mechavinon b'hu. She said, if I throw it down to show that I'm rejecting it as Kiddushin and I break it, I'm going to be chayiv in it because I'm a shomeris. But hacha b'toras Kiddushin yavinu nehale v'yisadol nichale l'shadinhu. But here, that he's giving her this mat for Kiddushin, let her throw it down if she doesn't want to be Mekadesh. So the fact that she keeps it should be a sign that she's accepting the Kiddushin. That's what they asked. So Parch Rav Achai asked on this question, Atu kulanashi dina gemira. Do you think that the nashim, are the women lamdanios? They don't know all these intricate details and distinctions. Even in this case, she thought that if she would throw down the mat and it would rip or whatever, as she threw it down, she'd have to pay for it. So she didn't throw it down, not because she was accepting, but because she didn't want to damage it and have to pay. So there is a discussion, is Rav Achai here the same Rav Achai as the Shiltos? Because the Shiltos is technically Gaonim, this Rav Achai is an Achara, is a Amora, but here they had Rav Achai, and now 2 lines later we have Rav Acha. So we know that in Yerushalmi and in Midrashim and the Bavli, sometimes we lose a first letter of the name that's an aleph. Let's say instead of Rav Elazar, it'll say Rav Lazar. So there's certain things that a letter gets dropped, the letter gets added. Is it possible that Rav Achai is the same as Racha? I don't know. But it's certainly not the same person. But the question is it the same? Is it different people? But is Acha and Achai the same name or not? I don't know. She says, what's halacha in this case with the money sewn into the mat? We did not hear that halacha. Rav Huna breder Rav Yeshua. Oh, Rav Huna Rav Yeshua was the one who made the distinction between pikadon and the mat. They said we didn't hear that. But if you heard that from him, you should be choshesh for him and hold its kudeshes. Whether it's Mugdeshes Misapek, Mugdeshes Vadai, you should be Choshesh. Rashi says she needs a get, but he doesn't say if it's Torah's Vadai or Torah Safek. Hi, it's a Dahavika Mizabna Varshachi. There was a certain woman who was selling Varshachi. So some type of either was some type of bow that you would put on, I don't know, your arm or something, or your forehead, some type of maybe a headband or something like that. Also, who gavra chatav varshcha mina. So a guy came and took the varshcha from her. Amrale havani haleh. She said, give it back. Amar la yavina lemikudeshes. Li said, if I give it back, you would mikudeshes. Shekalse ve'ishtika. So he gave it, and she was quiet. Amar Rav Nachman yichola lemeimar in shikli v'didi shakli. She said, yes, I took it, but I took what was mine. So I didn't take Torah's Kiddushin. I took what was mine. If someone was mekadesh with stolen property, with chamas property, so chamas property is it's not stolen, but you kind of forced the guy to take it in a case where he didn't want to sell it, or was gneva, or you took money from her hands and then were mekudeshes her with it. It is mekudeshes. So the first three cases, I don't know if it's completely similar, because Gazel, Chamas, and Geneva, it could be you stole it from someone else, and then you had a kinyan on it because when you stole it. The fourth case, to my mind, would be a little different, because if you took it from her, if she wasn't miyash and she's there, like our case, she's still there. So can he be kona it when he takes something from her in her presence and he's trying to give it back right away? Meaning, the fact that he took it, was it enough of a kinyan to make it his when he didn't buy it, she didn't give it to him, he just snatched it? And here he grabbed the selah from her hand and was, but whether the fourth case is like the first three cases or not, from the fourth case we see that that he took something from her and obviously gave it back, so that would be mekudeshes. So Hasan b'shidech, no, where there was mekudeshes, where they were already talking about getting married, so it wasn't out of the blue. But in the first case, it was out of the blue, so it doesn't work. When he took it from her and she says, give it back to me, he says, if I give it back, you be mekudeshes to me. And how will I what and I could tell you, how do I know that there's a difference if they were previously talking about getting married or not? The Tanya, because we learned in the Brisa, he said to her, give me the money, or here, take this money that I owe you. And then he changed his mind and said, actually be mekadesh me with this. At the time that he's giving to her, if she wants, then they're mekudeshes. If he didn't want, he's not mekudeshes. After he gave her, even if she wants it, they're not mekudeshes. My ratzda, my lo ratzda. What does it mean she wants or consents, and what does it mean she doesn't want? If you say that she says yes, that means she wants. If she says no, have a Kiddushin. So that means that if she was quiet, it should be Kiddushin, because she didn't protest and say no. So v'nisim mekudeshes stam kihasam. So why don't you just say mekudeshes like the other brisa that we saw on the bottom of Yudbeis and Medbeis? Al l'ratz damer in l'ratz the ishtkin. So it must be that if she wanted to get married, she said yes. If she didn't want, she was quiet. But we have a brisa that says if she was quiet, she ain't not mekudeshes. So how can you distinguish my time? What's the reason? She could say, yeah, I took it from you, but you had taken it from me, so I'm just taking it back. So I'm taking what's mine. I'm not taking Torah's Kiddushin. But then you ask a question from the Brisa that if he was mekadesh with stolen property or chamas property or theft or burgled property, or he took money from her hand and was mekadesh or she's mekudeshes, how can we reconcile all these different prices? So the reason that it works is because they're already talking about getting married. So when he said, be mekadesh me with it, so she takes it, she's showing that she doesn't want to be mekudeshes. So it must be because they're already talking about getting married. When Rav Asi died, the Chachamim went up to gather his teachings. So that's what Rashi says. They gathered to the Beis Hamikdash, and they all said, whoever heard something that we hadn't heard before in his name, say it, so we will, as a group, have it so we won't forget it. So it just, in regard to, so that there is a Gemara in I think the 7th parak of Brachos, where I think Rav died, and they were coming back from the funeral. They stopped to eat by a stream or something, and then they forgot a halacha about who should lead the zimun, and they said, we don't even remember his teachings anymore. So they wanted to make sure they knew his memros, and the group together hearing them all would strengthen it. Now there's, for whatever reason, Rashi doesn't say here that they were writing things down, even though Rashi in other places, I think Rashi says, I don't know if it's in Gittin, probably not in Gittin, but he says that they were allowed to, that even when they weren't allowed to write Torah Sheba'al Peh, you were able to write your own private notes for Torah Sheba'al Peh. You just couldn't have a text of Torah Sheba'al Peh. But here, whatever, they wanted to say the memors. He doesn't write anything about them writing down any of his memors. So Amar lehum Rabbanon Rav Yaakov Shmei, a certain one of those Rabbanon, and Rav Yaakov was his name, said Hachi Amar Ba'asi Amar Rav Mani. So I don't know why it just says Amar lehum Rabbanon Rav Yaakov Shmei. Why don't it just say that Rav Yaakov said? I don't know if it's trying to tell us something. But I mean, Rav Asi was kind of at the end of the Gemara, so maybe his students didn't have the status. No, Ravina and Ravashi. Ravasi was a little earlier. I'm going to say maybe he's not an Amora, but no, I think he was. Those was Ravina and Ravashi were Zman Chasimas Talmud. So Rav Yaakov said, Ravasi said the name of Ramani, Kashem Sheisha Niknas Bepachas Mishav Pruta, Kach in Karka Niknas Bepachas Mishav Pruta. Just like a woman is not acquired with less than a Pruta, Karka is also not acquired with less than a Pruta. Now it's a little bit interesting because if we learn Kiddushin Isha from Kicha Miste Ephron, now we're saying that part of the halacha of Sada is learned from Isha, and that's actually what Tosfos asks. The top Tosfos says, we only know Kiddushin from Sada, so how can you learn it the other way? So Amrulay, they said to him, there's a brayso that says a woman cannot be acquired with less than a pruta, but a field can be purchased with less than a pruta. When it says that it does work, it works. You're able to acquire the field less than a pruta. It means with chalipin. It's not for cash, but it's with chalipin. The Tanya, as we learned in the brayso, you could acquire things with a kli, even though the kli is not worth a pruta. So you give a handkerchief for a kli that's not worth a pruta, but it works towards chalipin. Then they were sitting and they said, another v'ka'amri, and they said another statement. Shmuel said, whoever doesn't know the details of Gittin and Kiddushin should not have anything to do with it. Amar Rav Asi, Rabbi Yochanan. So Rav Asi, so this is the statement from Rav Asi, the name of Rabbi Yochanan. The people who deal with Gittin and Kiddushin don't know they're worse than the Dor Mabel. So swearing falsely and murder and stealing and adultery, they were porates in, they burst forth, and blood touched. My mashma. So what does this pasuk mean? Can we targum Rav Yosef? As Rav Yosef said that the targum molden b'nei min shecha be'erhon choven al choven mosifim, when they give birth to children from their those wives of their friends, or maybe not friends but other people, they have sins on sins are added up because they have mamzer. And Rashi points out also when the word partsu, in this case, doesn't mean burst forth, but it means a baby being born. The frots that Bnei Israel were the more they were afflicted, the more they had more babies. So I think, I don't remember, is there a shita that a mamzer that niyuf is a oven that continues. I think we mentioned a rugged shaver. Maybe it wasn't here in the Kiddushin share, but maybe it's a different share. But the rugged shaver says that bloodshed is a chait that continues every time. They call the me'achicha, whatever. It's not just a one-time sin. So is the fact that you have mamzerim also a chait mamshech? I don't know if that's it's a possible shot in here. I don't know if it's the true shot. Uksiv, and it says, with the apostle Kain Tochel Earth, began to get yummy asfalt. So because of this, the land will be destroyed and it will be empty from the wild animals and the birds, and even the fish of the sea will be destroyed. However, in the Dor Mabel, the fish stayed alive. So, but for this sin of increasing mamzerim in the world, even the fish are going to die from. So that's why it's worse than the Dor Mabel. Because the pasuk says everything from the dry land died, so the drush is, but not the fish in the sea. The fish in the sea did not die in the Mabel. But here, for the sin of niyuf, even the dagim shabiyam. So the Gemara says, maybe it's not just for the sin of getting Kiddushin, making mamzerim, but maybe it's for doing all the sins, stealing and swearing falsely, and stealing and niyuf. No, that's not. We don't think that's pshat. Because of these, the way the land was destroyed. Rashi says that that's going on any of them. If it would have been talking about all of them, it should have said Alkain Teavel. So, because Ela is just one of the previous things. So maybe that was for one thing, but these sins are all together. So the Gemara says, which turn to your given on the base, Miksi Fartsu, does it say and the land will be uprooted? So it's not because you do all these things and then the land will be uprooted. Partuksiv. So it's as Rashi says, because it doesn't have a vav, it's its own thing. So for any of those sins, it's causing this great destruction. Then they said another statement. So a woman who had given birth, and she brought her chatas after she became tahora from her birth, from her giving birth, but she didn't bring the ola, and she died. So her heirs should bring her korban ola. Shmuel says that's when she separated the korban ola when she was alive. But if she didn't separate it while she was alive, the Yorshim do not bring the korban. So it seems that Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel holds that shibud is lav d'oraisa, because even though she had a shibud to bring the korban, but it's shibud is not d'oraisa. If it was d'oraisa, they would have to bring it, but this was not. But here it wasn't. So it didn't. So the shibud that it has is only midrabanan, so not d'oraisa. Amar Ravasi says Amar Rav Yochanan afagav shalohi frisha mechaim. And Ravasi and Rabbi Yochanan says even if she didn't separate it while she was alive, the Yorshim do have to bring the korban olam. And again, this is because she already brought the chatos. Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Ravasi and Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Ksavar Shibud have a d'oraisa. So it sounds like Rav Asi and Rabbi Yochanan holds that shibud is d'oraisa, even though she didn't separate it, but she already has an obligation to bring it. So the Yorshim have to fulfill it. So the Gemara asks, "Hapligi ba'achad zimna." Rav Shmuel Dami Travayim Milva Peh in the government Yorshim V'Lemin Lakuchos. Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish Dami Travayim Milva Peh government Bein Yorshim Bein Lakuchos. So Rav and Shmuel both said that in oral loan you cannot collect from the Yorshim and not from Lakuchos. If someone had purchased the field from you, that field cannot be repossessed in payment of this debt. Because Milva Peh, well, we'll see why. We're going to jump to them. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say that an oral loan does collect from the heirs and from the Lukuchos if you sold a field that was a security for this, you could collect from that field. So we already know from there that we hold Shibuda D'Oraisa. And even though it's only an oral loan and it wasn't written down, if it's written down, it has more permanence because there's a star and there's witnesses on the star. So we already see Rabbi Yochanan hold Shibuda D'Oraisa. So why do we need Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan to argue in regard to the case of the woman, the Yoletus' Ola, to show Shibuda D'Oraisa, Shibuda Lav D'Oraisa, if they already argued about it here? We need both statements. If we only knew the case of Korban, I would say because that's not a debt that's written in the Torah. Excuse me, I said that backwards. The Lav Malvam Hakazav Torah. To pay a loan back, you weren't obligated to pay that loan from the Torah. The Torah didn't tell you had to do it, but the Torah told you had to make a korban. So even though you wouldn't have to pay for the Melval Pet from the Yorshim, I might think for a korban you'd have to, because the Torah required you to bring the korban. But in the korban, maybe he would agree to Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish and require you to Yorshim to bring the korban. V'yashmin and Baha, and if we only know the case of the korban, Baha come Rabbi Yochanan, the Movak Suva Torah Kiksuva B'Shtar Dami, because something's written in the Torah is written in a star. Therefore, you have an obligation to bring the korban. Avo Bahach Ema Modu L'Shmuel. But when it's a voluntary thing that you undertook to take a loan, maybe the shibud that doesn't transfer to the Yorshim and the Lukuchos, Tzricha. Therefore, we need the Memros for both cases. We're almost halfway down. Last word in line is Amar Papa. Hilchos Amilva Peh Govim in the Yorshim ve'enu Govim in the Lukuchos. So Papa says we don't paskin completely like Rabbi Shmuel. We don't paskin completely like Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. The halacha is you do collect from the Yorshim like Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, but you do not collect from the Lukuchos, which is like Rabbi Shmuel. Gova mina Yorshim Shibuda D'Oraisa. We pass the Yorshim because Shibud is D'Oraisa. Vein Gova mina Lukuchos the lace like call it, but you don't take it from. If they had sold the field, you can't repossess it from the other owners because there is no, there's no rumors. Call is not the exact same thing as rumors, but if there's a written loan, it's people. Some people know about it, but if it's oral, there's no way to know about it. So the person who bought the field maybe wouldn't have bought the field had they known that it was mortgaged. There was a loan secured by this field. So it wouldn't be fair to them. So therefore, they're not allowed to. Their field doesn't get repossessed in case of a loan. Okay, 2 dots in the middle of your gimel on the base. Rekonis atzma get misas about. Bishlam get tiksiva kasalav sefer krisos. We understand that she acquires herself with a get because the Torah says if he writes her sefer krisos. Misas about minalan. How do we know that when the husband dies, she reacquires herself? Svarahu daha asra v'hu sharsa. It's a swear if he made her forbidden because he married her, and so now he could permit her when he's no longer alive. But there's case of arayos that don't go away when you die. For example, Rashi says Eishes Aviv, or the daughter-in-law, or Eishes Achi Aviv. So those arayos remain forbidden forever, even after the husband dies. She'ein labana masura hayesh labana muteres, but because the pasuk says about Yibam, who doesn't have sons, she's forbidden to marry someone else. But if because she has to do Yibam, so it must mean if she has children, she doesn't have to Yibam. She's allowed to marry anyone who she wants, other than these arayos, I guess. The Dilma ein labanim, for example, because she couldn't marry her brother-in-law if she had children. So the arayos stay, but she get married to someone else. Baby, if she doesn't have any kids, she's not allowed to marry anyone except for the Yavam. But if she has kids, she's not allowed to marry anyone. Once she has kids, meaning once she was married, she has to stay unmarried. But there's only a heter in the case of Yibam that she's allowed to marry the brother-in-law. Because she has no kids, we're trying to get her a kid. But if she has kids, maybe she doesn't have to get remarried. She wouldn't be allowed to get remarried at all. the fact that the Torah forbade a widow to a Kohen Gadol, it means that for a non-Kohen Gadol, to a regular Kohen, an almana is muteres. So maybe the Kohen Gadol, there's a prohibition, a losase, to marry a widow. But maybe for everyone else, there's no losase, but you're violating, for a regular Kohen would be violating an asay to marry an almana. So hayasay ma'avirte. So what would this mitzvah asay do? Ida hanya misas about tishri legamri. If the death of the husband helped, she should be completely mutter to get me married. Ida hanya misas about tukma b'melsa kamaisa. And if the husband dying doesn't help, she should be forbidden. She would still be with the first thing, which means, as Rashi says, we don't need to have a lav for the Kohen Gadol because she's already, as an Ish, she couldn't be married to well, I shouldn't say as an Ish, but she couldn't be married to him anyway. Why do you need a special a lav that an almana is a sort of Kohen Gadol? So no, maybe that you wouldn't need it because it would still be usher because of an asay. Because similar to psulei hamikdashim, so it was supposed to be a korban, but it was puzzle from originally. So if you got benefit from it, you violate meila. You're not allowed to share its wool and use it, and you're not allowed to use that animal to work. If you took it out from the hektish, then there's no problem of meila. Rashi says you're allowed to eat it, but you're still not allowed to share it or to use its milk if it was a female animal. So we see that the statuses do change before it was redeemed and after. So by war, if someone who is recently married, he doesn't go to war because maybe he will die and a different man will take her. We see that when he dies, his wife is allowed to marry someone else. Maybe when it says if someone else would take her, that would be after Yibum. But without Yibum, even meaning because they were recently married, so they don't have kids. So only after Yibum she could get married. But if there was no Yibum, a woman, because she already had kids, her husband dies, maybe she's not allowed to marry anyone else. One answer is that Yibum is not called an acher. But also it says by get, if she was divorced and she married someone else, then it says, so the second man hated her and wrote a sefer krisos, or the second one dies, she can't remarry the first one. So there's a hekesh between gerushin and death. Just like gerushin makes her free to remarry, so too, if the husband dies, she's completely allowed to get remarried. So we're at the very end of Yud Gimel Amud Beis for next time.